You've probably seen the videos online, right? Robots dancing, doing these amazing backflips,
Oh, yeah. They're everywhere.
even performing at huge events like the Spring Festival Gala.
Yeah.
It really feels like embodied intelligence robots physically moving in the world
Yeah.
is like finally having its big moment.
It really does feel that way. And those videos, they're not just cool clips, are they? They capture something, a real leap forward.
Yeah, like we're moving past those clunky factory robots.
Exactly. The tech's clearly hitting a new level. More refined, more capable.
And today, we're going to dive deep into one of the companies right at the heart of this, Unitree,
Ah, Unitree.
the Chinese startup behind those robot dogs, and more recently, the humanoids that have gone completely viral.
They've definitely got the public's attention lately. I mean, the hardware looks impressive, the movement, dynamic.
But there's more to it, isn't there? The story behind the videos.
Absolutely. How they actually got here, the thinking, the struggles in those early days, that's often the less told part.
And that's exactly what we want to unpack for you today. We've got this unique source material, a look into the early days of Unitree and its founder, Wang Xing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, through the eyes of someone who was there almost right from the start, an early believer, an investor, Zhang Peng. He founded Geek Park and Variable Capital.
Okay, Zhang Peng, so an insider's view.
Exactly. He saw Unitree way before the viral fame, back when it was just kicking off, around, what, 2017, 2018?
Having that perspective, someone who saw it raw, made a big call early on, supported them through tough times, that gives you insights you just don't get from the polished company story, you know?
Totally. It's the real story, the messy reality of deep tech.
Right.
So our mission here is to really understand that lesser-known early history, to dig into why Geek Park made that crucial investment back in 2018.
And what does it tell us?
Yeah, what does this whole journey tell us about maybe this new generation of tech entrepreneurs, especially in China, and just the nature of deep tech innovation itself? What nuggets can we pull out for you, the listener?
It's about getting past the shiny surface, isn't it? Understanding the core decisions, the kind of character it takes, the challenges that really shape a company in those quiet early years.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's rewind to the very beginning. Zhang Peng first encounters Unitree. How did that happen? What was it about that first glimpse?
Well, the spark, as he tells it, was actually from something really small, a short online article, basically.
That's an article?
Yeah, a few photos, a short video clip. It showed this early prototype robot dog they called Lycago.
Lycago, okay.
Now, to really get why this was so striking, you need the context. Zhang Peng's background, what he'd already seen in robotics.
Right, he wasn't just scrolling randomly. He knew the field.
Exactly. A couple years before, maybe 2015, he'd visited an MIT lab, and he specifically saw their cheetah robot there.
The MIT cheetah, yeah, I've heard that one.
He described it as this mechanical cheetah. Looked like a big dog's body, a cheetah head stuck on, very much a lab thing, bulky, steel frames, wires everywhere.
Okay, so very experimental.
Totally experimental. And crucially, it used hydraulic power, like Boston Dynamics early stuff. Very powerful, but,
Yeah.
well, lab-based.
So impressive tech, but clearly researched, not a product yet.
Precisely. And the feeling back then, even seeing this cutting-edge stuff at MIT, was that this kind of dynamic robot tech was still maybe 20 years away.
20 years, wow.
Yeah, 20 years from having a real impact, being widely used, productized. That felt like a reasonable time frame for something so complex.
That's a lifetime in tech terms.
It is. So fast forward just 2 years to 2017, Zhang Peng sees this short video of the Unitree prototype, the Lycago. And the contrast, he said, was just very shocking.
Shocking, how? What was different?
Well, first it was smaller than the MIT robot. That already felt more practical. But the key thing was the movement, the posture in the video. It looked way more mature, more refined.
Less like a lab experiment.
Much less. It seemed closer to something you could actually imagine becoming a product, significantly closer to productization than what he'd seen just 2 years earlier.
Okay, so visually, a big step up in apparent maturity.
Yes. And then there was the core technical difference, the thing that really jumped out at him.
What was that?
Unitree's robot used electric drives. Oh, as they say. Not hydraulics like the MIT Cheetah or early Boston Dynamics.
Ah, electric versus hydraulics. That's a fundamental choice.
Huge. And Zhang Peng immediately saw electric as the more correct technical path for robotics going forward.
Why? What's the advantage of electric?
Well, think about EVs versus gas cars, maybe. Electric systems often give you better control, more precision. They're usually more energy efficient, easier to make smaller, quieter.
Easier to integrate with software and sensors too, I guess.
Exactly. Hydraulics are powerful, no doubt, but they can be bulky, noisy, leaky, harder to control for really fluid, dynamic movements. So seeing this relatively unknown Chinese team.
Not from a famous lab or big company.
Right. Already pursuing this electric route and showing a prototype that looked more advanced, more product ready than top labs, and years faster than that 20-year prediction. So that was just very exciting, really compelling.
So what's fascinating here isn't just, hey, another robot dog. It's that this little prototype, found in a random article, basically challenged everything.
Yeah.
The timeline for robotics, who's leading the way, the pace of innovation.
Exactly. It wasn't the hype, it was the substance. The underlying tech choice, the apparent control, the maturity compared to the benchmarks. That was the real shock. That's what made him need to know more immediately.
And he didn't just think about it, right? He took action. Fast.
Oh, yeah. He felt he had to meet the person behind this, Wang Xing. He flew to Hangzhou within like 3 or 4 days of seeing that article and video.
3 or 4 days. Okay, that tells you something.
It really does. The technical impression was that strong. He needed to see it firsthand, meet the founder.
So what was Wang Xing like then, back in 2017? First impressions.
Peng described him as looking really young, like a student who just graduated, which, well, he basically had, only a few months out of university.
Wow, okay.
And he immediately gave off this vibe of, a science and engineering guy.
Yeah.
Deeply focused on the tech, the details, maybe a bit reserved.
Shy, even.
Yeah, Peng said he seemed a bit uncomfortable talking about himself or broader business stuff, appeared quite shy.
Okay, so what does that science engineering guy vibe signal to an experienced investor? Is that good, bad, neutral?
For Peng, it signaled something authentic, a deep passion for the technology itself. Maybe not the typical startup polish or sales flair, but real focus. It suggested his energy was going into the robot, the engineering, not the pitch deck or the company image.
Got it. Substance over style. And what about the place, the office?
Oh, the office. Yeah, that was another big contrast. He visited their workspace in Hangzhou in the Binjing district.
What was it like?
He described it as just one floor in some building. Pretty small, maybe only 20-something square meters. No sign outside, couldn't even find a company nameplate.
Huh. Not your typical startup space.
Not at all. Didn't feel like a standard office building. He got the sense maybe factories were nearby, just a very practical, probably cheap location.
It sounds incredibly basic, like bare bones.
Totally. He said it looked more like a big warehouse or a garage, just piled high with parts, components. You couldn't see clear workstations or anything.
Just stuff.
Yeah. And definitely not the vibe you'd expect, especially since they'd already got some early angel money. But despite all that, Wang Xing demonstrated 2 robot dogs for him.
He had working robots there.
2 assembled ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Even did the classic kick test, kicking it to show it could keep its balance.
Impressive tech demo happening in a garage, basically.
Pretty much. And the meeting itself, super awkward apparently. There was nowhere proper to sit down and talk.
Seriously?
Yeah. They ended up chatting for like 2 or 3 hours just sitting on a sofa out in a hallway.
Talking deep tech and investment strategy on a hallway sofa. Okay,
Yeah.
that paints a picture.
It really does. Extreme focus on the work, not the surroundings. And interestingly, Peng saw this lack of polish, this humbleness, as a positive sign.
Positive. Even though they had some funding. Why?
Because it signaled genuine, undistracted focus. It showed Wang Xing wasn't burning cash or time on superficial things, a fancy office, logos, conference rooms. His energy was 100% on the product, the technology.
He was actually building the thing, not just building the image of a company.
Exactly. And that made the tech itself seem even more impressive, right? This advanced stuff coming out of this environment. It made Peng even more curious about Wang Xing himself. Where did this talent, this gift for engineering come from?
Which leads right into that point about him having no affiliation, no established background.
Yes. Peng asked about his education, mentors, connections, and it turned out Wang Xing didn't fit the usual mold for someone doing such advanced tech.
Also,
He hadn't gone to a top-tier, world-famous university for robotics. No MIT, no Stanford. Didn't have a famous professor backing him. No big industry name endorsing him.
no traditional pedigree, basically.
None. Which felt unusual. In tech, especially deep tech, you often see people coming from specific schools, labs, companies known for that field, like belonging to a school or sect in martial arts, Wang Xing didn't have that.
He just sort of appeared.
Yeah, Zhang Peng described him like a new master who just suddenly appeared, with no clear lineage. Which wasn't necessarily bad, but it definitely added to the mystery and the intrigue. How did he get so good, seemingly on his own?
So that raises a big question, doesn't it? In a field like robotics, so often defined by academic credentials and big names, how do you evaluate talent that pops up outside those structures? How do you judge potential without the usual signals?
Yeah, it really forces you to look deeper, doesn't it? You can't rely on the name of the university or the famous advisor. You have to engage directly with the person, their thinking, their work, their character. It becomes much more about assessing the individual's raw capability and their approach.
So for Zhang Peng, this lack of a traditional background wasn't an automatic no.
Not at all. He'd seen founders without the usual pedigree succeed before, forge their own paths. So it wasn't a deal breaker. The real assessment happened in that conversation.
That 2 to 3 hour chat on the hallway sofa, what came out of that? What convinced him to invest?
It was the depth and the pragmatism Wang Xing showed when they talked tech. It wasn't a sales pitch at all. They focused on the technical routes, where the robot was really at, what needed to happen next. And Zhang Peng came away thinking Wang Xing was profoundly pragmatic and truth-seeking.
Pragmatic and truth-seeking. That sounds
Yeah,
different from the usual startup hype, right? The big, bold visions.
very different. Zhang Peng noted Wang Xing was actually more conservative, more rigorous in his technical assessments than maybe Zhang Peng himself was being.
How do you mean?
Like, Zhang Peng might suggest an ambitious timeline for some future capability, a complex move or whatever, but Wang Xing wouldn't just nod along. He'd carefully explain the specific, hard technical problems they had to solve first. The engineering hurdles they faced before that milestone was even possible, he'd gently push back on wishful thinking.
Wow. So he wasn't selling the dream. He was outlining the roadblocks, the actual work involved.
Exactly. Grounded in the immediate challenges, and even though he was super young, just out of uni, he seemed to have this deep grasp of the field's history, the key bottlenecks, way beyond his years. It suggested intense focus, tons of self-study, just real dedication.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. He wasn't hyping the market potential. He was stuck on the technical problems.
Yeah.
That feels very unusual.
It really is. And that ties into another key thing Zhang Peng noticed. Wang Xing didn't seem that excited about the obvious market applications you might think of.
Like robot pets or security guards.
Yeah. Zhang Peng would throw out ideas. Could this be a pet? What about security for big estates? But Wang Xing's mind kept snapping back to the technical hurdles. What needed to be solved fundamentally before any of that could be truly viable, truly robust.
So investor thinking market, founder thinking actuator torque or control loop stability.
Precisely. At that stage, with no real product market fit yet, Wang Xing wasn't talking trillion-dollar markets or platform strategies. He was focused purely on the tech stack, how it worked, its limits, and the engineering needed to make it better.
That sounds like it would mesh really well with Geek Park's own investment philosophy, especially for early deep tech stuff.
It did. Zhang Peng explained their view. Basically, these grand early stories about massive future markets, often a bit of nonsense, highly speculative.
Especially in deep tech, where the path is so uncertain.
Exactly. It's incredibly hard for founders to predict the final form, the big value creation system, right at the start. The journey is all about iteration, discovery, adapting. So that big story. It has emotional pull, sure, but very little decision-making value for a serious early investor. It can even reveal blind spots.
Okay, so if the big vision isn't the main criteria, what is Geek Park looking for?
The core thing is het person event fit. Is this specific founder the right fit for this specific challenge and the tough journey ahead? Do their character, skills, mindset match what this particular venture demands?
Right, connecting this to the bigger picture. That intense focus on the founder's character, their suitability for the specific task ahead over just a flashy market pitch. That seems absolutely crucial for early stages, especially deep tech investing, where the how is as important as the what.
Absolutely. It's a judgment about their ability to navigate that specific, often brutal path. And they saw the path for robotics as a narrow gate, a hin, or even no dirt road, a tough road.
No.
Not glamorous, not at all. Requires huge effort, patience, resilience. You got to turn the corner, put in the work before you even see the light. It involves a period of solitude, loneliness.
Sounds hard.
It is. Hard work, no quick profits, not much external praise, and, crucially, less competition from the eight-sided clever people. Those smart folks who are good at playing the game but want quick wins.
Because it's not immediately hot or profitable, it filters people out.
Right. This kind of lonely path suits a specific type. Deep focus, pragmatism, real passion for the problem, resilience to stick it out. And Zhang Peng felt Wang Xing's nature was uniquely suited for this journey. His mind was on the darkness before the light, the hard problems now, not just the bright future.
That focus on the difficult present, not just the shiny future, was a key sign he could handle the narrow game.
Yes, and another critical strategic choice really clicked. Wang Xing insisted on initially targeting the R&D and university market, not consumers.
Avoiding the consumer market early on. Why was that seen as smart? Seems counterintuitive for a cool robot dog.
Well, the R&D market research labs, universities, they're different customers. They buy the robots for their own research, their experiments.
So they don't need massive marketing or hand-holding from Unitree.
Exactly. They valued the function, the specs, and crucially, the price. It was way cheaper than robots from Boston Dynamics or academic labs. They didn't need a polished consumer experience.
They were sophisticated users who could figure things out.
Oh, right. And selling to them created a positive cycle. First, vital cash flow, just to survive and keep developing. Second, and maybe more important, invaluable practical feedback. 假说, these users were pushing the limits.
So Unitree got real-world testing and input to make the tech better.
Constantly. It let Wang Xing keep his limited resources focused on core tech, not get bogged down in consumer marketing, sales, support for a million different users.
So R&D wasn't the biggest market, maybe, but it was the smartest market for building the foundation.
Precisely. It allowed them to, as Zhang Peng put it, lay eggs along the way, get revenue, get feedback, but these were sex steps forward. Growth aligned with the main goal. Not distracting side projects, which he warned can happen, I use. The hen gets stuck caring for chicks instead of moving forward. Wang Xing chose the steps.
And there was something else more subtle about the robot's appearance.
Yeah, Zhang Peng noted Wang Xing's attention to the physical design. Even then, clean wiring, simple look. He saw it not just as style, but as an aesthetic, an engineering aesthetic, meaning it showed a deeper pursuit of excellence, of polish, building something well, not just functional. It signaled higher standards for the work itself.
Huh. So how the robot looked was actually a sign of his technical rigor. That's a cool insight. The aesthetic of good engineering.
It is, shows care, intention. And finally, the decision was underpinned by belief in the tech trend. They were convinced electric drive was the future, like EVs.
And Boston Dynamics hydraulics.
Impressive, sure, but seen as a bot on the wrong path for the long term. Less scalable, maybe less efficient, harder to control finally compared to electric.
And the four-legged robot itself was a step towards humanoids.
Yeah, quadruped robots were seen as a necessary precursor. A proving ground for the control systems, the balance, the actuators needed for the much harder challenge of bipedal robots.
Okay, so summing up the investment decision, definitely not an impulse buy based on a cool video. Not at all.
Not at all. It was rooted in judging the tech trend electric, assessing Wang Xing's unique fit for the difficult journey, person-event fit, and the logic of his strategy, R&D focus. High risk, sure, it's deep tech, but strong conviction in the logic and the founder.
Makes sense. Not just betting on tech, but on the right person with the right approach for a very specific, tough path.
Exactly. Calculated risk, but the founder assessment was key.
Zhang Peng was also pretty clear that this wasn't some crystal ball prediction.
Right.
They didn't know exactly how it would play out.
No, definitely not. He stressed it wasn't a precise judgment with a guaranteed outcome. Deep tech is just too uncertain. And the story of Unitree's early funding actually proves that point. There was a moment where Geek Park had to step up way beyond just being a passive investor. It was more like an unplanned rescue mission.
Okay, tell us about that. What happened?
This was during that angel round Wang Xing was trying to close in 2018. He needed a decent chunk of change, maybe 15 to 20 million RMB to really get things moving.
Which is more than Geek Park's fund could do alone at the time.
Right. Their early stage fund was smaller, so they committed their piece, but knew Wang Xing needed a lead investor for the main part of the round.
So Geek Park decided, yes, we're in, and then helped him find that lead.
Exactly. After their internal decision, they actively helped him look. They wanted someone who could bring not just cash, but maybe strategic help too. Tech scaling, manufacturing know-how, industry contacts, basically anything to wholesale boost his odds of success.
And they found someone. They got close.
Very close. Found a promising lead, negotiated the terms, even got a term sheet signed. Looked like the round was pretty much done.
But then the dreaded but.
Yeah. Due to some changes, Zhang Peng didn't specify, but these things happen in funding all the time. The lead investor backed out. Last minute.
Ouch. That must have put Unitree in a really tight spot.
Immediate crisis. Unitree was basically out of cash, struggling to pay salaries, keep the lights on, and Wang Xing, being reserved, didn't make a huge drama, but subtly let them know things were urgent. They needed funds just to keep operating, fulfill existing orders.
Which created a massive dilemma for Geek Park, right?
Huge, because thinking purely as an investor, putting their money in now, without the lead and the full round happening, that didn't solve the whole problem. It arguably increased Geek Park's own risk. Their original terms were based on that bigger round structure.
They could have just waited, right? Let Wang Xing find another lead, protect their capital.
That would have been the purely rational, risk-averse investor move. Wait and see.
So they faced this tough choice. Stick to the strict investment logic tied to the full round, or step up now for the founder they believed in, even if it meant taking on more risk themselves.
That was the crossroads. And Zhang Peng described the decision as almost instantaneous. A 1-second choice, like slapping the table or, shoot, slapping the thigh, a gut reaction.
So not a long debate, not crunching numbers.
No. He said in that moment, the mindset shifted. Less like a detached investor, more like a partner, someone with a deeper commitment beyond just the transaction.
And what did they do?
Geek Park decided to wire their committed funds immediately to rescue the company from the immediate cash crunch.
Wow. Just stepped in.
Yeah. Now, their money alone didn't solve everything, but it was a lifeline. Other co-investors who were also part of the original plan gradually came through too, helping Wang Xing piece together enough to survive the crisis.
It really sounds like that relationship, that belief in Wang Xing, and that sense of partnership just overrode the cold financial calculation in that critical moment.
It seems like it. And Zhang Peng made a point of crediting Wang Xing's own resilience during that time, too. How he managed the uncertainty, stretched the limited funds they did get. That was also crucial to getting through it.
So given that increased risk Geek Park took by putting money in first, what was the deeper rationale? Why take that leap?
Several things. One, their core belief hadn't changed. They still believed in the tech path, and crucially, in Wang Xing's ability and vision. The external funding hiccup didn't change the fundamentals.
Okay, the core thesis was still intact.
Right. Two, they were watching Wang Xing closely during the crisis, and he stayed focused, still dedicated to the work. Creator state was always full. He didn't let the funding chaos derail him. Seeing that resilience under pressure really solidified their belief in him as a true entrepreneur.
It's one thing to believe when it's smooth sailing, another to see someone keep grinding when facing collapse.
Exactly. Adversity reveals character. And third, Zhang Peng brought it back to Geek Park's identity, a founder community. They're built by founders, for founders. So they have this deep empathy, more empathetic towards entrepreneurs, for the struggles. Investment isn't just finance, it's also support within that community context. That empathy played a role.
That's fascinating, how that community identity, that empathy directly influenced a major financial decision. Prioritizing the founder's survival, the project's continuation, when the original plan imploded.
It really shows that in early-stage deep tech, where uncertainty is the norm, that human element, the trust, the relationship built through observation, can be decisive. It goes beyond spreadsheets. It was an investment in the person reinforced by crisis.
Which flows perfectly into understanding Geek Park's whole philosophy. It's about building this founder community. Zhang Peng insists they're not just a media company.
Yeah, he's very clear on that. Founded back in 2010, they defined themselves from day one as an innovation community, a read-you group.
You, not a news outlet.
Right. Their mission statement was about continuously discovering excellent innovators, becoming their partners, and creating value together. That sounds much more like a community goal than a media goal.
So the articles, the interviews, the insights, that was a tool to build a community.
Exactly. In the early days, how do you build a community like that? Content was the way. High-quality stuff on tech, innovation, entrepreneurship that attracted the right people. Current founders, future founders. So media was the means to gather the community, identify innovators, build credibility.
And then the community building became more direct over time.
Yes. They developed more interactive formats, things like Founder PK, where founders discuss challenges, plus lots of online and offline discussions, big, small, open, closed door, fostering real connection, shared learning.
So today, it's both. Media delivering insights and a platform for founders.
Pretty much. Especially in hot areas like AI now, he sees it as a place where real entrepreneurs get together and talk about the nuts and bolts, how to do things.
So how did the investment arm, Variable Capital, fit into this? It started in 2016.
Interestingly, variable capital wasn't Zhang Peng's original plan. It was actually pushed by successful founders already in the Geek community.
Really? Established founders told them they should start investing.
Yeah, he mentioned Zhang Tao, founder of Dianping, who became an LP in their fund, as a key voice. These successful entrepreneurs saw that Geek was really good at spotting talent early.
Like Zhang Yiming, Elon Musk, Lei Jun.
Yeah.
People they featured way before they blew up.
Right. The community founders saw this cognitive value, this insight Geek had, but they basically asked Zhang Peng, okay, you're great at spotting these people. You write about them, invite them to events, but what else are you doing with that insight? How is it creating more value for Geek for the community itself, to help it grow and do more?
They felt the insight was valuable, but maybe it wasn't being fully leveraged to strengthen the platform that generated it.
That was the core realization, just producing content, identifying talent. It helped the audience, sure, but it didn't create a sustainable feedback loop, a value cycle for Geek itself to grow, get more resources, and become better at helping the next generation of founders.
So investment became the way to capture that cognitive value and create that cycle.
Exactly. By investing in the founders they identified through the community, they could potentially share in the financial success. That return allows Geek to do more, attract better people, have more resources to genuinely help the founders they believe in. And the community model itself acts as this unique filter, this system for selecting people.
How so?
By watching founders interact, tackle challenges over time within the community, they get a much deeper read on them, especially those unconventional founders, the non-consensus bets. It helps confirm that person-event fit in a way traditional screening might miss.
Okay, so it's not just about having connections. It's the process of being embedded in the community, that deep observation that helps make better investment calls.
That's the key. The community is an active screening mechanism, perfectly suited for understanding human potential in the messy reality of innovation.
And the fund itself reflects this. For founders, by founders, FBF.
Correct. Variable capital is distinct because the LPs, the investors putting money in, are mostly successful founders themselves.
So founder money investing in new founders.
Yes, but it's more than just the money. These experienced founders contribute their time, their hard-won lessons from their own pits, their past mistakes and challenges. They offer mentorship.
Real-world guidance, not just cash.
Invaluable stuff for early-stage teams. The whole goal of FBF is to boost the success rate of new founders by providing that experience alongside capital. Investment is a tool within the community to strengthen the ecosystem. It's not just a pure finance play.
Zhang Peng also used that interesting phrase, consistent investment. Like dollar cost averaging, but for people and innovation.
Yeah, the idea is commitment. Consistently applying their framework, their principles for identifying and supporting founders, even when the short-term results are unclear.
Investing more than just money.
Right. Investing, enthusiasm, expertise, patience, a lot of it, even emotional support. Because starting a company is incredibly hard, often lonely.
It's about partnership, not just transactions.
Exactly. Befriending founders, being partners, helping however they can. And the belief is, while you can't perfectly predict the outcome of any single investment, if you consistently apply this logic over time, you build a system. And eventually, value will emerge. Some ventures will become huge successes, a giant value emergence.
Like dollar cost averaging requires patience and belief in the long-term logic.
Precisely. He compared it to driving with cruise control. Stick to your principles rather than constantly swerving, which is inefficient and risky. Unitree, from 2017-18 to now, is proof this long-term, patient approach can work, even if the explosion felt sudden. Peng was another example he mentioned.
It's about building a system based on principles and deep understanding, trusting the process over trying to pick individual winners perfectly.
Exactly. A portfolio approach fueled by community insight and long-term commitment.
Let's zoom out a bit now. Zhang Peng talked about the broader context, right? how the whole environment for tech startups in China has changed, especially after maybe 2016, 2018.
Yeah, he drew a really clear line. The mobile internet era, say 2011 to 2016, that was about optimizing on existing tech platforms, like competing on a paved stage where success came from efficient performance, better models, faster execution within known boundaries. But now, especially for ambitious founders, it's totally different.
It's not enough anymore to just be really good at optimizing something that already exists.
Exactly. He borrowed from others like Liang Wenbo, saying future Chinese innovation can't just be tiny incremental improvements or just productizing existing global tech better. It needs real forward breakthroughs, stuff that genuinely just raises humanity's ceiling, pushing the absolute boundaries.
And he sees this as the mission, the reality, for the younger generation. Post-90s, post-95s, post-Sestu's founders.
Yes. They grew up differently, have higher ambitions maybe.
Yeah.
Their path has to be about innovating where there's no clear roadmap, no benchmark to follow, exploring deep uncertainty. Because the big players already dominate the paved stages. To break through, they must penetrate that ceiling.
Create new levels, not just play well at the current top.
Right. And doing that, working on the frontier, demands specific qualities.
Like what? What does it take to penetrate the ceiling?
First, he said, you have to be pragmatic, humble, willing to bow down to the sheer difficulty. You need immense, powerful inner drive. Because there's no immediate positive feedback, most people won't get it.
Because most people believe what they see. But innovators have to see because they believe.
That's the quote he used. It means you have to be okay working in the dark initially. He described it vividly, like surere crawling on the ground, meticulously sensing everything.
Crawling.
Yeah, like sense the ground with your whole body, feel the direction of the wind with every pore. Super careful, detailed, patient work when you can't see clearly ahead. No blind leaps.
And just pure endurance, sticking with it.
Absolutely essential. Enduring years of quiet, hard work. No fanfare, maybe not much funding. He mentioned DeepMind's long slog on AI scaling, or Liang Wenbo's years of focused work before breakthroughs.
So that raises a question for anyone trying to foster innovation, right?
Yeah.
How does this demanding, lonely path actually shape the founders who succeed on it? What kind of person emerges from that?
It selects for incredible internal drive, definitely. Tolerance for ambiguity. Getting satisfaction from solving the fundamental problems, not just from applause. It builds resilience, pragmatism, an insane ability to learn by doing, by failing, by persisting.
And Peng sees Wang Xing as a perfect example of this, even arguing that the solitude of robotics early on was actually Wang Xing's luck.
Yeah, paradoxically, that quieter period for robotics, maybe 3 to 5 years with less VC frenzy, less hype compared to apps or whatever, was tough, sure, but also his greatest fortune.
How is being ignored lucky?
It gave him breathing room, time to warm up, prepare, crucially, make mistakes, fall, and polish his system, the tech, the team, the supply chain without intense, well-funded competition breathing down his neck. He could build his foundation, refine things with R&D clients without pressure for premature hype.
So when robotics did become hot again, Unitree was already way ahead of the curve.
Exactly. When the era took the handoff, when embodied AI blew up, Unitree wasn't starting from scratch. They had years of foundational work, a working product for R&D, a tested team. They were just much more ready.
And Peng sees Wang Xing as more than just one success story. He's like a new pattern for evaluating founders in China now.
He does. Wang Xing doesn't fit the old mold. No golden background, fancy overseas degree, stint at a tech giant. He's a grassroots founder. Raw talent, deep tech passion, rigorous discipline learned through doing.
Not the conventional CV for investor confidence.
Right, but his growth through that hardship, those 5 years of grinding in relative obscurity, that might be worth 10 years in an easier environment. Entrepreneurship, especially deep tech, is like a pressure cooker for growth.
So his journey offers a new lens, a different way to see potential, beyond just credentials.
That's the idea, a Kua pattern. It highlights things like technical rigor, pragmatism, resilience, enduring solitude, focusing on fundamentals. Peng hopes this pattern gets recognized more, gets more support. He sees Geek Park's role as partly identifying and nurturing this type, but acknowledges the whole ecosystem needs to embrace it more for wider impact.
It's about learning to value the quiet rigor, the deep focus, the resilience needed for the really hard stuff, not just the easily recognizable signals.
Yes. looking for the qualities needed to navigate that darkness before the light in frontier tech.
Okay, let's bring this deep dive into the present. From Zhang Peng's view, what's the reality now for Unitree, for humanoid robotics? What's the outlook?
Well, based on recent chats, Wang Xing's focus is still exactly where it's always been: product and technology. Full stop.
So even with all the viral fame, the attention, the hype,
Yeah.
the core work is still just grinding on the fundamental engineering.
Absolutely. Zhang Peng stresses that despite the cool demos, the excitement, humanoid robotics is still really early stage. Mature looking maybe, but still early.
How early?
He used an analogy from self-driving cars. Maybe humanoid tech today is like level 2 autonomy.
L2, so assisted driving, basically.
Yeah.
Capable in some ways, but needs constant supervision, not fully robust.
Exactly. Impressive in controlled settings, but not ready for reliable mass deployment in the messy real world without significant constraints or human help.
So still a long way to go to get to, say, L4 equivalent real autonomy.
A long way. Getting there needs huge leaps on multiple fronts. The robot's brain, its AI, cognition, understanding, its beak, cerebellum, real-time control, balance, dynamic skills, and its beat limbs, better hardware, actuators, physical capabilities, tons of complex, fundamental problems remain.
Which means patience is still the name of the game for everyone.
Absolutely. Massive patience required. He said maybe now they've turned the corner and seen the light, the potential is visible, but they are not yet at the new continent. The journey to truly capable general-purpose humanoids is still long. More exploration, more breakthroughs needed.
And Wang Xing's core strengths, that rigor, that pragmatism, those are still seen as his key assets for this next long phase.
Precisely. His scientific, grounded approach, focusing on what's actually possible through rigorous engineering, not just hype or bold claims. Zhang Peng quoted that, saying, "You can't just assume bolder you are, the more the land produces." Not in engineering. It takes method, iteration, execution.
It sounds like he has that crucial mix, the big, bold vision for the future, but combined with this incredibly disciplined, pragmatic focus on the hard steps needed today to get there.
That's the balance, right? Especially in frontier tech. You need the dreamers, yes, but they also have to be exceptional, rigorous doers. You gotta be wary of big dreams paired with unrealistic or flimsy plans. The path is hard, and the rigor in execution is everything.
So we've really journeyed through this Unitree story, haven't we? From that random online video sighting
To the hallway sofa meeting.
to that make-or-break early investment decision, driven by partnership as much as numbers. We've dug into the tech choices, Wang Xing's unique character, Geek Park's community-based support.
And try to see what it tells us about innovation now, especially in China's push towards deeper tech.
Yeah, we've seen the weight of technical judgment, the value of founder character over slick pitches, the strategy behind choosing a harder initial path.
And how crucial that solitude period, that patient, pragmatic work can be for long-term deep tech success.
And that powerful idea of the new pattern, the founder, without the golden CV, but with the intense rigor and resilience needed for the frontier.
Challenges the old metrics, doesn't it? Makes you think about what qualities really drive breakthroughs.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on based on everything we've discussed about Unitree's beginnings. If the future of innovation, especially in places aiming for global leadership, really does involve penetrating the ceiling, exploring deep uncertainty in fields like robotics.
And if that path inevitably means years of hard, quiet, rigorous work in that darkness before the light,
Then what does that mean for how we, all of us, society, investors, partners, innovators, should be identifying and supporting the next generation?
are we actually looking for the right signals? Do we value that quiet persistence, that deep technical grind, as much as we value the flashy demo or the big market story?
Is Wang Xing's story just a one-off, an interesting anomaly? Or does it genuinely offer a new lens, a different pattern we need to understand better, to find and foster potential in unexpected places, a pattern crucial for the future of innovation globally? Something to think about next time you see a mind-blowing new technology emerge.